Welcome to the Clarity Project.
All right, let's talk about a name that's pretty much guaranteed to spark a debate. AIPAC. I mean, how does this one organization have so much influence over U.S. foreign policy? Is it some kind of secret group pulling the strings from the shadows? Or is it something else? We're going to cut through all the noise, all the conspiracies, and get right to the facts. The real structure, the actual mechanics of how this power works.
Yeah, you've definitely heard the name thrown around. And usually it's one of two extremes, right? On one side, you've got people saying AIPAC secretly runs American politics, and on the other side, people say its influence is just blown way out of proportion. So, where's the truth in all that? Well, that's what we're going to figure out. We'll look at what it is, how it actually operates, and start separating those big myths from the reality.
And this slide, this really sets the stage perfectly, doesn't it? You've got the perception on one side, this idea of a shadowy command center, secret deals being made in some back room. But then you have the reality, a really, really organized and, frankly, very public network that's built to influence policy. And our goal today is to take you from that perception to the reality of the mechanic.
All right, so let's get down to brass tacks. First things first, to really get a handle on its influence, we have to be super clear on what AIPAC actually is, and maybe even more importantly, what it isn't. Okay, so officially, the name stands for the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, and it's been around for a while. It was founded way back in 1951. Its mission, at least on paper, is pretty straightforward: strengthen the relationship between the U.S. and Israel. And here's a key point: it's a registered lobbying organization. That means what they do is legal, it's regulated, and it's all part of the public record.
Now, this next point is absolutely crucial, probably the biggest point of confusion. AIPAC itself does not donate money directly to any candidates. It's not a PAC, a political action committee, in the way most people think of one. So where does the power come from? Well, it comes from educating lawmakers, from coordinating advocacy efforts, from guiding this huge network of donors, and from mobilizing voters around their key issues. Think of it less as a piggy bank and more as a highly sophisticated influence machine.
So to really get how one group can be so effective, you kind of have to understand the basic playbook for influence in Washington, D.C. It's not magic, not at all. It's a system, a machine. Think of influence in Washington like a building, and it's held up by these 4 pillars. First, you need a funding ecosystem, a way to connect donors to candidates. Second, you need to mobilize voters, get people on the ground. Third, you need expertise and access, so you can be the one giving lawmakers the information they need. And fourth, you need consistency. You have to keep that pressure up, not for a year, but for decades. And look, this isn't some secret AIPAC formula. This is the standard playbook for any powerful lobby, whether you're talking about the pharmaceutical industry or a defense contractor. So where AIPAC really shines, what makes it so effective, is its incredible discipline in mastering all 4 of those pillars at the same time. It creates this self-reinforcing cycle. See, it builds relationships on both sides of the aisle. It connects its vast network of donors to candidates. It knows how to manage politics, rewarding allies and pressuring opponents. And it is constantly educating lawmakers with its specific view on the issues. It basically becomes the perfect bridge connecting donors, lawmakers, and its own policy goals. Okay, so now that we've got the mechanics down, we have the playbook, let's use it to start tackling some of the biggest myths you hear about AIPAC's power one by one. All right, let's start with myth number 1. This is the big one, right? The idea that AIPAC controls the U.S. government, that it pulls all the strings in Washington. So, does it? Let's look at the actual evidence.
Well, the short answer is no. Think of it like this Venn diagram here. You've got this massive circle of U.S. strategic interests. That's everything from the Pentagon to the State Department to the economy. Then you have AIPAC's influence, which is a smaller, but still pretty significant, overlapping circle. It absolutely influences the conversation, no question. But it doesn't have a veto. I mean, look at the Iran nuclear deal back in 2015. AIPAC fought that deal with everything it had, and it still passed. If they truly held veto power, things like that just wouldn't happen. Presidents wouldn't publicly criticize Israeli policies, and the idea of putting conditions on military aid wouldn't even be up for debate. But all of those things do happen.
Okay, so on to myth number 2. This is the one you always hear. It's all about the money. The idea that AIPAC's power comes from just outspending everybody else. But is that really true when you stack it up against other big players?
Well, if you look at the raw numbers, the actual lobbying dollars spent, AIPAC is, well, it's dwarfed by some of these other giants. I mean, defense contractors, the healthcare and pharma industry, fossil fuels, they all spend way, way more trying to influence policy. So if it's not just about having the biggest checkbook, what's the secret?
Well, here's what you could call the secret sauce. There are three main ingredients. First, extreme organizational discipline. And this is so important. It means that everyone, from a brand new volunteer to a top board member, is using the exact same talking points. Second, they have super narrow, single-issue objectives. They're laser-focused on the U.S.-Israel relationship, unlike other groups that have a dozen different interests. And third, long-term consistency. They've been playing this game for over 70 years. So their power really comes from this incredible focus, not just the finances.
Okay, myth number 3. This is the idea that AIPAC's work is only for Israel's benefit, that it's all about a foreign country. But here's the thing about successful lobbying. It's never a one-way street. To be really effective, you have to convince the government you're lobbying that your goals are actually in their national interest too.
And this is where AIPAC's strategic framing is so effective. It operates right in that sweet spot, that overlap you see here between U.S. interests and Israeli interests. They are constantly framing their arguments around things that sound like mutual benefits. Intelligence sharing, fighting terrorism together, military technology cooperation. And look, whether you agree with that framing or not, that's the mechanism. That's what makes their advocacy work so well in Washington.
Now, it's really important to remember, this kind of influence wasn't built overnight, not even close. It's a result of a very long game, a decades-long strategy of consistency and political pressure.
If you look back right from its start in 1951, AIPAC started racking up key wins decade after decade. Things like securing military aid packages or blocking arms sales to countries seen as rivals. But this wasn't just a string of one-off victories. Think of it like compound interest. Each win made the next one easier. And over time, as you can see, the political cost of standing against their core issues just got higher and higher. It got to the point where supporting their agenda became the default, almost automatic, bipartisan position in D.C. But that old landscape is definitely changing. Today, that long-held power is facing some pretty significant new challenges. First, you've got political polarization, especially with younger Democrats who are just way more critical of Israeli policy. Second, discussions about human rights in Gaza and the West Bank, well, those aren't fringe debates anymore, they're mainstream. And third, you have the rise of other groups, like J Street, offering a different, more critical, but still pro-Israel viewpoint. The political ground is absolutely shifting, and that old, uncontested influence, it's not so uncontested anymore.
So the big question is, with all these new challenges popping up, how is an organization like AIPAC adapting? And what's really going to determine how much power it holds in the future?
Well, in response, we're seeing a pretty clear three-part strategy emerge. First, they're pouring a lot of money into primary elections, particularly on the Democratic side, to try and block critics before they even get to the general election. Second, they're working hard to maintain that broad, bipartisan support, because that guarantees them access, no matter which party is in control. And third, they're doubling down on their core arguments, focusing on national security, which tends to be less divisive than getting into more ideological debates. Because at the end of the day, influence is never permanent. It has to be earned and re-earned constantly. So AIPAC's future power is really going to hinge on three big variables. First, public opinion. Will the shifts we're seeing, especially with younger Americans, change the political math? Second, Israeli policy itself. How will the actions of the Israeli government be perceived here in the U.S.? And third, strategic value. Will the United States continue to view the alliance as absolutely vital to its own national interests? These are the questions that will shape the future. So let's just pull this all together. On one side, you have the myth, this idea of absolute control, of unlimited money, all coming from some secret command center. But the reality is a lot more nuanced. It's about strong, powerful influence, yes, but it's achieved through totally legal lobbying, incredible organizational focus, and a really disciplined network that, frankly, is now facing more challenges than ever before. So what's the real bottom line here? AIPAC is, in many ways, a textbook example of how to do American political lobbying effectively. It absolutely influences policy in a major way, but it doesn't control America. And maybe the biggest lesson here isn't even about AIPAC itself. It's that if you really want to understand how power works, anywhere, on any issue, you've got to look past the slogans, past the easy conspiracy theories. You have to see the structure underneath.